I called it Jesus Christ. Jesus, a play on the name Jesus Christ, but a Jesus from China, so like a Chinese Jesus Christ. A lot of the times I like to use religious iconography in my work because religion is a very big deal back here in Ghana. And over the last few years, we've seen the heavy influence of Chinese businesses and the Chinese banks play in the economics of the country. So I wanted to depict the Chinese premier literally as the savior of the African continent. So I decided to capture him on a donkey, alluding to the biblical narrative of the Christ figure riding into Jerusalem to begin his mission or his teaching. Definitely satire. There's a little bit of all those points in my work, but I thought you needed me to choose this one. A purple Trump, like the villain in the recent Marvel Infinity War movie. Also with the Infinity Gauntlet with all the Infinity Stones embedded in it. After seeing the film, I thought I could draw some parallels between the character in the film and the character of Donald Trump. Being a leader of a very powerful nation with almost all the power to be able to fix the world, fix the problems in the world, instead of creating more. So I decided to paint a portrait of Trump and then also refer to certain characteristics of the movie character and just see how I could use that narrative to discuss something that is real. Humor, satire, politics, I'll say satire because it already has elements of humor in it, and then also politics is a subject matter for me. So if I had to pick one, it'd be satire as the best way to describe what I'm doing now. My name is Bright Ackwerh, and I'm a painter, but I also like to illustrate a lot. And for the past 3 years, I've been interested in social commentary and political satire. And it's very, very important for me because I find my work questioning a lot of the things happening around me that I don't understand. So oftentimes when I encounter something, I try to create work to make commentary on it and then to pose questions to whoever I'm connecting with, be it the powers involved or just other members of my various communities that I partake in. And it's something that has been very interesting because over the years, people have also contributed actively to what I'm doing. So there is always a very vibrant exchange between myself and various members of the audiences. I've always enjoyed drawing and painting since I was a child. And then I had a chance to study visual arts in school. I was in Accra Academy and I graduated in 2006. And then I proceeded to the KNUST. Over there, a lot of things changed for me. Art was no longer that innocent, beautiful pastime. But then it became a very, very critical tool for understanding life. By studying the example of other artists who have practiced before me and are practicing now, I became more aware of the kind of power that I held as an artist or as a creator. And it has been something that has also been very, very fulfilling, because not only do I tend to express myself, it happens that I'm able to speak for a few other people as well. For me, primarily, it's an expression of myself and my thoughts. If at a point I happen to be expressing something another person is thinking, it's a plus. But it has always been about what my personal visions are, what my reactions to things are, and the kind of questions that I'm interested in asking. So, because I can't do anything else, it's basically my life right now. Um, I can't imagine myself doing anything else other than creating art, and especially creating the kind of art that I create. It has become second nature. It has become part of my identity as a person, and also a good contribution to my community and generally to life. So it's just me living. I think creating art for me is just living and just sharing my opinions on things. Why art? Because nothing else. I think different kinds of artists play different kinds of roles. Um, for me, and the kind of work that I create, my role in society would be to create knowledge, to test the extent to which certain ideas can be stretched or experienced. Because through the kinds of questions that I ask, a lot of these answers are going to be expanded, or people are going to think new things. And these new things eventually become part of how we understand life or how we live our life. So I'm always ending my answers in so, and I don't say anything else. The painting that features the characters of Obama and Michele Obama and Mandela, Mugabe, and David Cameron is one that I call selfication. It was something that I painted after events at Nelson Mandela's funeral service. At a certain point during the event, these famous world leaders were captured in the stands taking selfies. At about the same time, Nelson Mandela was being eulogized. And it struck a chord in me. I thought for such a solemn event, the least people could do was to pay attention to the events that were going on. However, these leaders were rather busy taking selfies. It for me, it was a sort of a display of the position Africa has in global politics, because a few moments later, he would be Mandela would be called all the fancy titles and be given all the great honors, but it was a bit contradictory that these games were going on when such an important event was happening. So I wanted to get people to talk about it, and so I painted a picture of it. I also featured a character of Robert Mugabe in the painting, because throughout the political careers of Mandela and Mugabe, they've largely been portrayed on opposite ends. So Mandela happens to be the darling child all the time, and Mugabe happens to be the villain. So if the darling child of the West or the world is being treated like this, then how sincere is that reverence? Were the policies that he set really in his favor or in the favor of all these other people. Robert Mugabe is a recurring character in my work because of some of the characters that he stands for. A lot of the times when I feature political figures, not only am I interested in their person, but also in their characters. So Robert Mugabe for a long time has been that very, very controversial but strong-willed African leader who is not afraid to speak his opinions about the global politics, about the politics of the West and their influence on the continent. So for me, he is a certain symbol of defiance. It's unfortunate that he's lost his position, and so there aren't many voices like a Mugabe out there presently, but his life or his career in politics for me represents that defiance. And so anytime I want to speak about defiance, he's the first person to go to. Robert Mugabe is a very interesting character, and just like every other character, there are more than one side. There's always more than one side to a person. Yes, there is the not so positive aspect of him being a dictator and wanting to be a president for life and all, but we've all seen only recently the president for life policy being adopted by a country like China to the world's fascination and admiration. So then again, what is the basis of that critique if it's okay for China to do it and it's not okay for Robert Mugabe to do it? In his own lifetime and on several platforms, he's expressed this same sentiment because he also compared himself often to the Queen of England. Anytime there was that pressure from international press for him to step down because he's been a ruler for too long. You see, so how do you then measure these critiques? Why is it okay for one set of people to do something he is not allowed to do? So there's that interesting double-sidedness to Mugabe's character, and I think it even makes it more interesting. In my practice, resolution is not really my focus. I'm more interested in maybe causing more confusion or posing more interesting questions, because for a character like that, presenting a lot of contradictions, it even makes it more interesting for me, because depending on the kind of narrative that I want to push, I would know which side of a character to present. So the more conflicting it is, the more exciting it is for me, because then I can also create different layers of meanings to my work. My process begins usually with me tapping into current events. I need to be updated on what the latest stories are in politics, in general popular culture. So I'm also very interested in what's happening in popular film, popular music, and the lifestyle. When I have a narrative I want to push, depending on which tone I want to speak with, if I want to say what I'm thinking in a political sense, then I know the kinds of characters I would employ in my painting. And because I also know something about different kinds of characters and what they each represent, I'm able to put them together into a sort of performance. My work is almost like me casting characters to play a role in a film, only that the film becomes a painting now. So after deciding on what story I want to present and deciding on which characters to cast for it, I would source for material online. reference material, especially in the form of pictures of these characters or videos. And then I make drawings based on these. I like to tell my story using bodily gestures, facial expressions as well. So aside sourcing for these materials, I also do a lot of drawing in the studio. Sometimes I have to pose myself and use these poses to complete my drawings because my process is very much traditional. You know, the style of painting is very traditional, and so there are certain ideas or processes in traditional painting I still employ. Yeah, so I'll do all of these. I'll paint my pictures and then I'll share them. I like to use the internet and social media space a lot because it allows me to connect directly with different kinds of people. You know, so there is always a certain kind of exchange after my work is shared. Also, with the internet culture, work is able to travel to different parts of the world that you can not even imagine. So I think all these, I try to use a lot of everyday life, you know, living experiences in my work. I think all these things add some kind of interesting tone to it. My observations are not only based on popular figures, but also on everyday people. It happens that because I'm interested in people's attitudes, and also because I want to communicate with a broad audience at once, I would often highlight certain characters who are already known and associated with the attitudes I want to speak about. For instance, if I want to talk about something that affects the Ghanaian people, it's nearly impossible to maybe paint individual Ghanaians, but I can represent Ghanaian people with the Ghanaian leader, who is, I think, constitutionally representative of the people. It helps, you know, it helps because these characters represent the larger group, as against trying to paint individual characters. There's been a few times when maybe not popular faces have appeared in my work. It's a matter of which strategy I think works best for what I'm trying to achieve. Some of my biggest influences have been the FOKN boys, who use music and film generally to spread their message. They've been a very big influence on my work. I'm also interested in the work of the Nigerian legend Fela Kuti because of how he managed to use his music to mirror society so well, as he's known for. There are a lot of other people whose practice have influenced my own, and some I can't even begin to remember, but those two names are the easiest to remember right now. Somewhere in 2015, when I was still experimenting with various kinds of painting, I would make one or two illustrations or satirical illustrations and share them on the internet. And people began to respond very well to these. I don't think they were as loaded as what I'm trying to do now, but that response was very, very positive for me, and it helped me to decide to explore more using this particular strategy. I guess because I was interested also in speaking with the people, and that was the medium I could do that best with, I decided to stick with it and try and explore it as much as possible. So from 2015 up until now, I've tried to use this particular medium and extend it as much as I possibly can. Since 2015, when I started illustrating digitally and sharing on the internet, it's opened a lot of doors for me, which has allowed me to show my work in many different places, not only on the internet but also in physical spaces. So some of my work has been featured in exhibitions in galleries and museums and art festivals. So I think I've been able to grow a certain kind of audience and reach out to even more people than I anticipated when I started this project. And it's still a process that is ongoing. So I'm aware Ghana has had a very active history of artists using satirical illustrations to comment on societal issues. And I used to see these things in the papers all the time. They were like these small cartoons on the corners of the papers. Some of these artists I've had the honor of meeting in person, and also I've worked closely with a researcher who constantly writes about the work of these artists. I could see how far they could take their work, and my interest was also how I could try and continue from where they left off, or the kinds of examples they set, how I could also extend that and make it my own. So I'm very aware of them. I still look up their work from time to time. Mensah Otabil is a very interesting character for me, even more so with the kinds of stories that have broken in the recent past about his work, and just generally about the popular Ghanaian response to the man and his dealings as a preacher and as a businessman. I made that painting because I was very curious about some of these things that we heard. Initially, there was a story about a church event where members were encouraged to pay certain amounts of monies so they could receive some kinds of blessings. And then it followed up with the issue of a bank on which board he sat failing. And then recently, there was another report about how that failure went, how it came about. And then there's been a lot of calls from the public for him to provide certain answers to some of these questions, which he didn't do. And so I decided to share that particular drawing, which I made in 2017. I depicted him carrying his Bible in one hand and some amount of money in the other, but he's surrounded by sacks of money. Like I do in a lot of my other works, I try to create a double or triple meaning to it. There's been times when I've explained to people that it means he's only interested in that little amount of money when he could have taken more. Or he's just interested in taking money from people as against what is popularly acceptable for a preacher man to do. When I do something like this, it opens the floor for people to share their opinions, not only about my work, but about this important story in the Ghanaian's life. So he's only like a representation for a host of other preacher men who do similarly to what he has done. So I wanted to weigh the response to some of these things. Every artist has a position, and this position is in your vision. It helps you decide how you choose to practice, what your interests are, what kinds of questions you want to pose, and all. So my biases are there, yes. It influences my work, yes, but I've never shied away from it. I think if someone sees my work or has been following my work, you can tell the kind of person I am. You can have a fair idea about the kind of person I am and the kind of things I'm interested in and the kind of ideas that I want to push. So it's always been registered in my work. Obinim, interesting. John Mahama, goat as in greatest of all times. Addo, short. Macroon, young. Obama, very shady. Mandela, peaceful. Michele Obama, strong. The Queen of England, very old. One word. Well, it would be old. Old-fashioned is one word. Mugabe is definitely stubborn. Stubborn. My dream project. Presently, my dream project would be to have my work exhibited in a way that everybody can experience it. I've done a few experiments using street posters in the past, and I'm looking to do something again. Very big and very captivating. Presently, it's what I'm dreaming about, but once I see it through, I'll have another dream.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.